Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host, and I'm really glad to be joined today by Patrick Anderson. He is founder at Anderson Economic Group over in Lansing, Michigan, just a short drive from here. And boy, he's got plenty to share with us today. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you, Jim. Nice to be back on your show.
It's good to have you. You know, I always enjoy connecting up with you because you always have interesting insights and you make them palatable, even though they might not be so much on the face. So I think we might have some of that today.
Palatable. That's what I aim. Actually, aim for credible and as palatable as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Before we dive into the palatable and unpalatable and somewhat incredible, why don't you just share who you are, how you got doing what you're doing?
Well, Anderson Economic Group is a company I started 28 years ago. Is a business consulting firm. And as you mentioned, we're headquartered right here in Michigan. We also have an office in Chicago. And we do work in the automobile industry and other industries all across the country. And our focus here is on doing, as I mentioned, credible, serious analysis about where to locate businesses, how much businesses are worth. And often we're working in franchise industries such as alcoholic beverages or automobiles and looking at, in particular, what cars sell, how they sell in an area, what's the value of a dealership in that area, what happens if you breach a contract. So sometimes we do expert testimony on that. And automakers, auto trade associations, manufacturers, their associations, sometimes states and universities rely on the Anderson Economic Group to do really sound work and give them good advice. And that's what I'm pleased we've been doing for 28 years out of our office here in East Lansing, Michigan, and also in Chicago.
Yeah, and it's great stuff. You know, like so many people, I came across you on LinkedIn and have always been impressed with, number one, the quality of the analysis, but then number two, your whole approach where, you know, so much of this stuff's so divisive and gets people revved up emotionally, and you always keep it on an even keel. And, you know, I really admire that. I can't claim to be capable of doing that as well as you do.
Well, thank you. That's something that we try. I mean, and well, I'm sure we're going to talk about things, but, you know, for example, the people that have gotten so advocacy oriented about some things like whether or not you want to drive an electric vehicle. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've now since at least 2021 consistently talked about what the actual costs are. What are the actual real world costs? What are the actual real world risks, et cetera? And then if you want to buy one, fine, but you want to know. And if you want to sell them, fine, but here's where you are. And now after 4 years, I mean, I've seen even this past week, still people out trolling folks, trying to attack them on this. But the market test is coming through and pretty much the way we expected. Yeah. And that's what we want to give our clients. We want to say, all right, there are still reasons people want to buy this, but here's the actual costs. If you want to build them, great. But you ought to know. And that's what we try to do. And I appreciate you observing that.
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, in the end, any analysis is good because it gives you the ability to look forward and to predict. And, you know, certainly on the EV front, what you have anticipated, like you say, is pretty much spot on in the market.
Yeah, that's been the case. And I know you want to get started on a question, so I'll wait. We'll come back around to that one, I'm sure.
We will. Thank you for keeping me on track. Yeah, the first topic is related, but not directly the same. And that is tariffs, obviously another hot button issue that gets people revved up. Talk to me a little bit about tariffs in general and then how that relates to the auto world.
Well, we first started to, in some cases, sound the alarm, but at least call attention to what was at the time President, or actually candidate Donald Trump's tariff stance, then President-elect Donald Trump's tariffs announcements, and then in particular after we had an actual written statement in February and what he said on Inauguration Day, we started to actually calculate, here's what the likely effects are in our automobile industry. And those numbers that we've come up with are stark, and they've been the subject of considerable debate. And I'm pleased to say it's actually, I think, playing a part in getting the administration and the automakers to get serious about making it more reasonable.
Yep.
And you might have noted that twice the Wall Street Journal has cited these and said, look at the costs, look at the potential punishment. They actually use the word punishment for Michigan, using the Anderson Economic Group estimates of $2,000 to $10,000 per car, including American cars. I don't mean cars from over in Germany. They may be $15,000, but cars that we think of as American cars built in the United States with American parts, can have an $8,000 tariff cost associated with it. That's going to affect whether people are going to buy them, and it's going to affect whether we're going to have jobs to make them. So
Yep.
I think the work that we've done on this has been very helpful for policymakers, for the president, for automakers, and for others to look at it and say, we need to be paying more attention. We haven't solved that issue yet, but at least we have a strong basis for thinking what the cost is going to be.
Yep. Yeah. And like the broad picture on tariffs, it's kind of an evolving scene, right? So
evolving would be a nice way to put it there.
I'm trying to be, palatable. Like
talk about palatable. I mean, we had weeks here where they were, where they would change during the week.
Yep.
And you notice if you go to the Anderson Economic Group website, which I encourage people to do, and see our estimates, we actually kept some of the other ones out there. So we had January 21, Inauguration Day. Here's what he says. February 2nd. That's only 2 weeks later.
Right.
But I mean, in his defense, Inauguration Day, he's just coming in. You can't expect to have a whole plan. February 2nd, we have a written document. Here's a plan. And we're pointing out to the industry, you could have tariffs in April.
Yeah.
And this is what they would look like. And pretty much that's what's happened. If you look at also then finally the March 26th proclamation, which is what we're working under right now,
Right.
You have an explicit statement about here's how we're doing it. There's been an additional kind of pullback, which I'm going to say is partially due to the prominence of these estimates in the Wall Street Journal and others saying, and automakers saying, look, this is just too much, too costly.
Yep.
And that's moderated a little bit. But if you look at our estimates on the website today, you get a pretty good idea how much tariffs are going to be imposed on these cars.
What have we seen so far when it comes to actual prices?
It's either heartening as an economist or scary as a consumer to look at what's happening. Let me say that American consumers have behaved exactly as if they were all on our website looking at this, deciding, yep, that's what we're going to do. Because if you looked at what we were saying in February and in March, you say, oh, sometime around April, or as early as April, but May, June, July, we're going to see costs go up. So if I want to buy a car, I better buy it now. And if I'm not sure I want to buy a car, I'll just wait. And what you've seen with auto sales is exactly as you would have expected, exactly as we warned. March auto sales went way up. People are going to run out and buy those cars. April auto sales, again, I'm talking about new cars. And now that we're into May and you got tariffs on some vehicles, they're dropping. And you also see transaction prices being affected. So pretty much as you'd expect in the new car market, American consumers said, if I want to buy a car sometime over the next few months, I'm going to buy it pre-tariff. And now the tariffs are in place, I guess I'm just going to wait. And that means that the damage that we were talking about and we have been warning about in terms of jobs is starting to happen. There's not mass layoffs, but you already have distress among suppliers. There's already been at least one bankruptcy. There's already lower demand, and that's going to mean, if it continues, fewer jobs in the American auto industry. And let me underline here, I'm talking about the American auto industry.
Hmm.
If I go over to Ontario, which is south of here, as I often remind folks, if you're in this
Right.
part of Michigan,
Yep.
and east of here, it's worse. I mean, Ontario is really going to be hurt by this, and other states are going to be hurt. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Alabama, Texas, perhaps South Carolina. These are all states that are also going to be affected.
What about used cars? What's the effect been there?
It's funny that you asked that, because back in February, I started to say 2 rules for tariff uncertainty from the customer point of view. First one is, if you're going to buy a car and you find one, buy it now, which is pretty much what Americans did in March.
Yeah.
People
They were
that
all on your
bought
website.
a car, they bought it. And that's what it's like. Hey, you see a car, it's got the equipment you want, buy it right now. The other second rule of tariff uncertainty is cherish that used car, because you might be driving it longer and it's going to be worth more. And you definitely see used car values go up. And
Yep.
you know, I happen to have bought a used car back in January, and I'm getting it fixed now because I ended up hitting a deer. But you know, not that I'm trying to sell it, but the value of the price went up a couple $1,000, because if somebody wants to buy a new car now, they're thinking of potential significant tariff costs. So
Yep.
a more affordable choice for Americans has always been to buy used cars. The median car sold in the United States is a used car, not a new car.
Right.
And for most Americans, that's much more affordable. And yeah, it's affecting them. It's already in the market.
Let's talk a little bit broadly about tariffs. So, the argument obviously is by the Trump administration is we've been taken advantage of by pretty much all our trading partners forever, and
Yeah.
we need to redress that balance. So what's your philosophical point of view on that?
I completely understand I'll say the general objection.
Yep.
And when we did our analysis, we quoted what the president said in the proclamation, in the original executive order, in his statement on Inauguration Day. He talked about the border enforcement there. Clearly there was, especially on the southern border.
Mm-hmm.
I think dereliction of duty is a mild way of putting it here.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a terrible dereliction of duty, and I don't think we've fully paid the price for that yet, in terms
Agreed.
of,
Yep.
Not only open borders, but in some cases active work to bring in people and subsidize
Right.
without vetting them.
Yep.
And I'm saying this as someone who's been very supportive of legal immigration and continues to be.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
our company here has people who've come to the United States to our benefit and theirs. So I'm happy they're here, but they came legally, and that's not what was going on in huge numbers that Americans objected to. Also the drugs, human trafficking, other things. So the president had every right to bring those up. Americans broadly support that, and nothing in our tariff analysis undermines that. What we do point out is, if you raise tariffs on steel and aluminum, which the administration now has,
Right.
and you have these 25% tariffs on automobiles, and importantly, automobile parts, you are taking cars that are assembled in the United States. In between where you and I are sitting, we have the Delta Township plant. It's this
Right.
way. You're over there, right there. Delta Township plant. We're building a whole bunch of General Motors vehicles, and we are using parts from Canada and Mexico, and to some degree Europe and other places, as we should be. And it's a success. That's a newer plant there. So we're tariffing that. At the same time, some of the assemblies that are coming from here are going over to Ontario. We're building things over there, including
Yep.
things like Chevrolet Silverados.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, talk about American cars. Chevrolet Silverado might be actually assembled in Mexico, might be assembled in Canada, might be assembled here.
Right.
People look at it and go, American car, as they should. But now we're slapping tariffs on some of that. So
Yep.
this is going to cost us sales and it's going to cost us jobs. There's just no two ways around it.
Yep. One of the terms you use is cars costs cognitive dissonance, and I wanted to hear your explanation of that.
Yeah. The Cars Cost Cognitive Dissonance article, that is now published in the journal Business Economics. I'm very glad it's out there. And what we were talking about in that article is how for at least 3 straight years, I'll say 2021, 2022, 2023, and into 2024, so more like 4 years, we had the whole industry, multiple governments, state and federal, here in the United States, plus European governments, automakers, big ones, medium-sized, small ones, all cheering on, forecasting, projecting this EV transition. I was one of them. I'm driving an EV, drove an EV today, as you know.
Yep.
And I've been driving one for 5 years. And we had a parade. Actually, multiple parades. I'm not sure what the term is for multiple parades. I'd say a pride of lines. Let me say a gluttony of parades here of consultants, futurists, media people, like Bloomberg. Bloomberg was one of the ones most widely quoted, saying,
Right.
"We have passed the tipping point towards mass adoption. Now we're reaching. We already passed it. We are going to 50% EV sales."
Yep.
And companies like Anderson Economic Group, people like myself, were saying, hold up here. We're at 4%, not 40, 4%. Okay, we're going towards 6. Maybe we get to 7%.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, these things about it actually costs more for a lot of people to drive an EV, not less, more.
Yep.
And for some people, these reliability and charging issues are really serious. People like me who might have to drive up north and who have run into situations like ending up in a dark parking lot in Novi, Michigan at night trying to charge.
Yeah.
Or Wixom, Michigan, which is another dark parking lot I've been in. I want to thank the auto dealers, by the way. I finally got charged at auto dealers out in Wixom there at night, because the regular system that was set up, Electrify America system, was not working.
Mm-hmm.
And good for them. They helped me get charged, but that's a lot of burden on people. So why did we, in the face of this information from my company and from others, continue to talk about mass adoption, continue to talk about an all-electric future, continue to issue reports saying we're past the tipping point? We're on mass adoption. We're going to have this S curve.
Yep.
We're closing down production of internal combustion engine vehicles, shutting them down. We're not going to build these anymore. And it was a contagion that wasn't even limited just to the US. It was also in Western Europe and to some degree in Asia. But there were a handful of people who didn't buy it. And I'll say here, we were one of them. Again, we said EV is going to grow, but grow from 2 to 4%, grow from 4 to 6, grow from 6 to 8, 8 to 10, not 8 to 40%.
Right.
And Toyota was another one. Said, no, our plans are that by 2030, we might be selling, say, 19% of our vehicles. And what happened, and you witnessed this, is the Toyota chairman was almost ousted in a shareholder vote. I mean, they went after you are the chairman. I want you to think about this. You are the chairman of arguably the most successful auto company in the world.
Yep.
We want to fire you. We need to fire you because we know better than you. And our futurists here say that everybody's going to do this and you're behind the times.
Yeah. And he was pilloried in the US business press.
Yeah. And for us, fortunately our auto industry clients have stuck with us, but we've been pilloried again on the LinkedIn stuff and some other things. Even reporters that cited our work told me they got harsh calls and people calling their editors saying, "We've got to fire that person. How dare they do that?" And it's very bad. when you allow, really, I use the word contagion, but this what I call cognitive dissonance, where you say, I'm going to stop cognition, thinking, and start just buying an enthusiasm, an ideology. And that's one of the reasons I think that so many in the industry got it so wrong.
Yep.
And so many in government got it so wrong. Not a little wrong, huge wrong.
Enormous. Yeah.
And I don't have another explanation for this, because it wasn't just limited to advocacy groups. It was also manufacturers, it was governments, and it was people that you would think, big accounting firms. Say, if you look in there, Ernst & Young and others with forecasts and survey data saying 50-60% of people want to buy an EV next time. And I don't understand how you keep your reputation saying that, unless you've got some kind of cognitive dissonance or something that's stopping you from thinking clearly.
Well, and at the time, your report prompted me to also write an article at Forbes, at my outlet, and I included the term irrational exuberance in my headline.
Yeah.
And I was forced to remove irrational.
Were you really?
Yes, even though I dug into it because, like you said, there was supposed this is happening across the board in Europe, and so we're clearly going to follow that. And then I went and got the documentation from Europe, and it didn't confirm that picture whatsoever. Yeah, there were certain countries where it had gone crazy, but then you dig into it, and those countries were lavishly subsidizing EVs. And even them, when you looked at it at that moment, it was already tapering off. And some of the countries that were less heavily subsidized had actually gone backwards. And I pointed all that out. And yeah, my editor at the time got a hold of me and said, no, that we can't have this term.
Wow.
That's
I forgot about
judgment that we can't make. I'm like, it's right in there. Nope, take it out.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to add you to the list, Jim. When I do your article.
And to your point, we get these things now where it's this huge groundswell that just seems to wash otherwise sober and rational people along with it, where it's just this political tsunami that just knocks everyone over.
It still continues on. I actually, unfortunately, even last week, I got some internet trollers that were, taking pot shots of me, and my responses are, please read artigle. That's like, not you're wrong.
Yes.
Please read article. Facts. Here it is. and go ahead. If you want to drive an EV, go ahead. And
which you do,
which I do.
Your point earlier. Yeah.
Like
you don't know from firsthand experience.
Awesome. For all the reasons that we knew 4 years ago. If you like and I'll say this for anybody who's interested in driving one, they're, really smooth, fast acceleration.
Yep.
If you like a quiet vehicle, it's all there. And if you have just short trips in a defined area and you can charge at home, you still probably pay a little bit more, but maybe if you're willing to drive fewer miles and you want a second car, okay. It's a free country and I want you to have the choice. And I chose that. I also want you to know that if you got to drive up north, you got to pull a trailer, you got to take your kids to school. Sometimes you can't stop for 2 hours. You want to be thinking about a hybrid, something with a nice internal combustion engine. And that's pretty much what's happened out there, is that people have made rational choices exactly as they should be able to. And their rational choices, 9 out of 10 of them want an internal combustion engine.
Right.
That's totally fine with me.
And so today we are seeing car makers finally belatedly responding to that. So for example, you had pointed out the partial U-turn by GM. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. General Motors, even at the beginning of this year, said, we are moving toward the all-electric future. All right. And this had been a mantra, all-electric future, under Chairman Mary Barra. And if you went back to 2021, you could see a reason why, they were very enthusiastic, perhaps irrationally enthusiastic, but you know, they also, General Motors, they were doing some things, and I still give them credit for it. They were thinking it all the way through in terms of the platform and what they could do.
Yeah.
And a lot of this had to do with, we can reduce costs. We can get a smaller number of platforms. We can get interchangeable battery things. We can make deals with battery makers, as they did with LG and others. We can get state governments to subsidize us. And then we, under the Biden administration, we can get huge federal subsidies.
Right. Yep.
And we can come out there with vehicles with heavy software and with all the advantages of EVs, and do it fairly quickly. And the regulatory structure, with the change in the also under the Biden administration, under the Inflation Reduction Act, we're not, especially as they interpret it, they could now get an unlimited number of tax credits for people buying Tesla and GM. Tesla and GM had hit the cap under the original law. You know, that seemed like at least a reasonable business strategy. And you know, nobody knows the future, including me. Even though I'm kind of in the business, I admit there are things I don't know, like what's the weather going to be tomorrow, but, at least in Michigan. But if you're staying with that all electric future, and you get to 2024 and 2025, and you are losing $20,000 and $30,000 a car. There's some estimates in the article, Cars Cost Cognitive Dissonance, drawn from the financial disclosures. You want to be telling your shareholders and your customers and your dealers that you're going to still build those vehicles that customers actually want. And so this, just in the last month, they've made $5 billion of investment decisions.
Yep.
Originally, it was $888 million for the Tonawanda engine plant. I'm going to use the term that was used for decades, engine plant. And you know why, Jim? It's, you know, listeners to your podcast are really going to know the inside stuff. It's an engine plant because they build engines. They've been building engines there for decades.
Yep.
I just want to thank you, anybody from New York working at Tonawanda engine plant. You build some of the best engines anywhere in the world. Some of the GM small block V8s, awesome engines.
No doubt. Yep.
For some reason, they've renamed the plant the Tonawanda Propulsion Plant. So if you read the press release, it says Tonawanda Propulsion Plant. Okay, and that's their plant. They get to name it whatever they want. Yep. And they can build propulsion related products for electric vehicles, ICE vehicles, and hybrid vehicles. Yep. But the big deal here is we're going to build internal combustion engines to power products that people want. That was $888 million, subsequently $4 billion, of which at least approximately $2 billion is devoted to the Orion plant back over here.
Right.
And the Orion plant has been essentially mothballed for 2 years because it was intended to build EVs. And people, I don't want to tell any secrets here to your audience here, but it's not 20% EV penetration. It's not 25. It's not 30. It's 8. This many here for 8. That right. This is what highly quantitative skilled people do. They still count with their fingers. It's 8% right now, actually a little bit less, and way less than that in Michigan. So with that the case, General Motors wisely stopped 2 years ago, said, let's not spend another $1 billion outfitting this plant for a product we can't sell. And now they're going to put $2 billion in, some of which is going to undo what they did, but a lot of which is going to be just new stuff, so we can build new products that, by and large, people want to buy. And let me know. General Motors got a really good portfolio of vehicles for a lot of segments, for pickup trucks, for SUVs, and for some of the small crossovers. Excellent products, as well as some halo products like the Corvette, and they sell products that people want in those segments, and they make money on them.
Yeah.
And they have
Yep.
dealer network that will repair them. So it's a win-win-win situation for that. And I and so many other people are happy about this.
And to add to that, I was pleasantly surprised to find when I did an article about them a few months ago that they have completely turned around their quality picture. That was kind of a dark chapter they've had over the last few years, and the latest JD Power and Associates reports had them consistently highly ranked. So that's extremely good news.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Ford has had a really, really bad, let me say, last two chapters with huge recalls throughout there. And this is an ongoing challenge. Let me say, and I'm going to say this involves United Auto Workers, involves the other people, involves some management decisions. And not that people in the industry need to be reminded, but let me remind you that one of the ways the American auto industry ended up in bankruptcy was failure to take quality seriously. And Toyota takes quality seriously. Honda takes quality seriously.
Yes, they do.
Hyundai takes quality seriously.
And let's not forget that those Japanese companies are now some of the biggest assemblers in the U.S.
Right. And I never forget that. And for example, if you look at the Anderson Economic Group estimates of tariffs on American cars, I am including American cars like Honda Civics, like Toyotas that are built in the Midwest, and Honda's built in Ohio, and other products that are built, Hyundai's built in Alabama, and Mercedes-Benz vehicles that are assembled in Alabama, and BMW is assembled in South Carolina, as well as Tesla's assembled in California. I mean, these are American assembled cars. None of them are 100% U.S. built. I don't think it's possible to build 100% U.S. And even then, even if you attempted to, you'd find out that some part actually came from somewhere else. But they have substantial U.S. content, substantial U.S. jobs, U.S. engineering, design, logistics. That's all good. We want that. And that's something that I hope we continue to develop in the U.S.
Agreed. Now, you had a chart you wanted to share. Do you want to dig into that?
Yeah, we can look at that. Is that the tariff costs chart? Yeah. Just for folks that are out there, you can get a really good idea of what these costs are per vehicle. And it's
you got it there?
Yeah, this is for 27 different vehicles. And this is using the April 27th proclamation. So you're getting the tariffs as they are in place right now, including the partial credit for parts that were announced later on, which was a lowering of the cost, especially for producers that have some parts that come from Canada, for example, which are almost everything produced in the U.S. has some parts from Canada. So you can see there, and you see the color, and ones over in the left are more assembled in the U.S. or assembled in Canada with mostly U.S. parts. And you see the cost here, and we've got a number of them that's like $2,000 to $4,000. And the ones with heavy U.S. content get that, like a Ford Explorer gets in that category. In the relatively low tariff, $2,000 to $4,000, and then you get up to $8,000 where we have some of the most profitable vehicles built in the United States, the Chevrolet, GMC, Cadillac, full-size SUVs, Escalades, etc., where you've got about 37% U.S. content and substantial content from Canada and Mexico. And this tariffs can be $8,000 or more tariff costs. And then you have some over on the right, and you can see the on the lower one where it's mostly that light blue. You've got $10,000, $15,000, and $20,000 and $25,000 on some luxury cars imported from Europe. They're not high volume ones, so I'm not telling you that anybody's going to be walking. They're not. Almost everybody that buys one of these vehicles already has two cars.
Right. Yep.
But if you wanted to buy a luxury European or Japanese import, and that car was going to cost $100,000 or $125,000, you're probably looking at $20,000 or $25,000 tariff impact.
Yep.
So that's, as we anticipated, and as we said, some of those cars are just not bringing them. They're not bringing them over because they don't know what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
you know, buyers in that market might just say, nope, not paying that.
Sure.
So that's a situation right now. I will note, since we're having this discussion in early June, when we made these estimates, we pointed out that there's a substantial amount of inventory out there that's pre-tariff. So that my advice to auto buyers out there is still the same. You know, before you throw up your hands and say there aren't any cars, check. There might be some cars.
Yep.
And if you can get one pre-tariff, you can buy it now and there's no tariff. The real risk here is when we exhaust this inventory.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. Any last thoughts as far as the tariff picture, the EV picture, or broader automotive?
No, definitely not last thoughts. I mean,
Right. Pay attention.
yeah.
You'll have more coming.
There,
Right? We will include links to those
that's gone
reports.
by without a change. Or maybe we might have 1 month, but if you add the steel and aluminum tariffs, we haven't even got a month without a change in this policy. So,
Yeah.
it's not over. And with EVs, I'd say still watching. Again, if you're in the market and you can afford the limitations and charging, and you can pay the extra cost up front, go ahead and buy an EV. Just be aware.
Yeah.
If you're in the market, if you're in the business of building them, I'd urge you to look at the Anderson Economic Group cost calculations and keep these in mind, because customers think about costs. And they think about real world costs, not ideal case government,
Right. Yeah.
advocacy scenarios.
Yep.
So that's there. And you can expect there's going to be policy changes here, because as we pointed out, currently EV drivers benefit from a subsidy in terms of the road taxes. They don't pay any federal gas tax. In a lot of states like Michigan, they pay a state tax, which usually isn't enough to compensate for the road tax funding. I think that's likely to change. The Biden administration Inflation Reduction Act subsidies are likely to change.
Yep.
But right now, there's still some. If you want to buy a car there and you're interested in EV, there's some, let me say, great deals out there.
Well, we will include links to your site and some of these reports that you got this info from. So if folks want to go dig into that and keep apprised of the moving picture, they can certainly do that. Now, before we wrap up, another subject that you have commented on in the past, I used to post the music clips, and occasionally got your attention on that. So I had asked you to bring some of your favorite music selections with you. So
yeah,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, Jim Vanowski and rock and roll go together just like Jim Vanowski and manufacturing.
For sure.
Well, I mean, I got two to bring up today. One is growing up in here. Obviously, I was a rock and roll fan, and when I was a kid, hope my teacher's not looking, but I had to skip school to go do this, but I went out to the Pontiac Silverdome and bought tickets to see Led Zeppelin.
Oh yeah.
So I got a great memory. If I don't think of certain parts of that concert experience, I have a great memory of the music. Led Zeppelin, of course, is not around now, but there is a great band that I've had a chance to see twice, which is Zepparella, which is an all-female Led Zeppelin tribute band, which has great performers, and it's some of my favorites there. You can see a lot of them on YouTube, and playing that music almost as well as when Jimmy Page was playing it. So that's my first one. And the second one, especially for people who love Michigan in the summer, the Neil Anderson Jazz Quintet has a great, relaxing, beautiful song called M119. If you haven't driven M119, I urge you to do it. Maybe this year. Go up and drive M119. don't text, or I don't want you to text anywhere, but I mean,
Yeah,
enjoy
exactly.
the beautiful road. And if you look on Spotify or some of the other places, you can see Neil Anderson Quintet, M119, and some very relaxing, nice melodic jazz music that was inspired by one of the most beautiful roads to drive.
And I will definitely include links to those two as well, so people can go find that. On the Zeppelin front, a couple of things. My two older brothers had tickets to see Zeppelin, and unfortunately, that was when Robert Plant's son passed away,
Oh
and
gosh,
their
yeah,
concert was canceled. So they're still in mourning.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
terrible. But
yeah,
on the good side, I just recently rediscovered the Rain song. I'd never forgotten about it, but
yeah,
just hadn't heard it in forever. And if you've never heard the Rain song, go find it, because
yeah,
that is one of the most gorgeous pieces of music ever.
yeah. And I'll say, for one of the things I like about the Zepparella, their guitarist Gretchen Mann, also violinist.
Oh,
Her
yeah.
rendition of 10 Years Gone, which includes this beautiful guitar solos, is really nice. So
Check it out.
yeah,
Well,
that and the Neil Anderson trumpet solo in M119. Don't miss that one either.
and one last thing to share, since you mentioned horns, my oldest brother just saw Chicago last weekend.
Really?
Now my younger son is in marching band. He'll be a senior this year. He plays trombone, and I had
Yeah.
mentioned that, yeah, definitely, pay attention to James Pankow. And my sister-in-law sent a clip of James soloing just for my son AJ.
Oh wow,
concert.
that's great. And I will say that I have now started to appreciate the marching bands, and I'll actually go to games, and I used to like bail out and get that at halftime.
Yep.
Sometimes I want to watch the band, especially if you're at the big house in Michigan. They have some great bands, and I'm not talking about just the Michigan band, but the Badger band, Michigan State band. I get a chance to see sometimes right in East Lansing. They have some distinctive moves and stuff. Some of the great band culture, and the music that they're playing is great. So that's something that I appreciate more. And as
me too.
you're around the Midwest, you got some Big Ten colleges with some great bands.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been quite an experience. My wife and I both went to high schools that were too small to even have a band. And my son goes to Granville, which has a phenomenal program. And it's just been quite an education for us, and definitely, a new appreciation for those kids and how hard they work. All right, Patrick, thank you for joining us. Do you have any last thoughts to share with people before we wrap up?
Well, I hope everybody has a good summer here. I mean, if you're like me and you're in the Midwest and you get a chance to enjoy summer, what a great time to be in, a state like Michigan or some of our other Midwestern states where you see lakes and trees and some cool weather, hot weather too, and get a chance to go fishing, spend time with family, and enjoy your July 4th, because this is still the best country, the country you want to be in.
I couldn't agree more, and thanks for wrapping with that. Thank you for being here, Patrick. It has been incredibly insightful. And of course, thanks to you in the audience. You are why we're here. I can't promise every episode's going to be as insightful as what Patrick brought us today, but they're all going to be at least a little insightful. So we're here every Tuesday, and watch for short clips daily now. So if you can't watch the long show, there will be little snippets of Patrick's coming over the next few days after it airs. Pay attention to those. You can learn a lot just from those little minute or two short clips. So thanks again from Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky signing off. So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.